Hello everyone, this is RC0538, and for this guide, I'm going to be bringing you an anti-tank guided missile infantry unit guide, as well as combining that with AA infantry. Now, anti-tank infantry could mean one of two things. If I just say AT infantry, I could also mean basically anything in the fire support tab, because a lot of those also carry rocket-propelled grenades, some shorter range some shorter range ATGMs, as well as recoilless rifles. And so all that can take on, a very generic meaning. So today we're just going to be looking at ATGM infantry, and then, of course, later looking at the AA infantry. Now, anti-tank guided missile infantry is all, not to say standard, but all very similar. For example, we're looking at usually they're going to maintain between a 2450 to 26-25 meter range. I believe all the Blue 4-1s have a 2450, with the Soviets, the Concourse ends up getting a 26-25 meter range. I think the only one to break that norm would be the RBS 56, and it only has a 22-75 meter range. So anyways, that's ATGM infantry. ATGM infantry, you'll usually see for Blue 4, the Milan line. The Milan F3, for example, is the most advanced of these, and the most accuracy you're going to get out of it is 50%. You're going to be doing a significant amount of damage, though, with 26 armor penetration, but this ground range puts you in range of, like, the BMPT, but usually it won't be able to spot you just because it's an infantry unit, which makes it more stealthy. In fact, it has very good stealth, but it's pretty apparent, usually, where you're launching it from. So expect a bombing run or an artillery strike. At least that's usually how I'll deal with it. If you don't have any, and make sure you have like some, if it's on the front line, which they probably will be, make sure that you have some normal infantry or supporting units, as well as anti-aircraft and recon. After all, if they don't have recon, they're pretty much useless, because they won't be able to see anything or shoot anything. Now, when we look at, some of these, we can see that, like, they are pretty, varied. For example, the Soviet line gets to the Concourse. The Concourse is actually really, really good at dealing with enemy tanks, as well as dealing with, some dangerous vehicles at a long range. Now, since they are anti-tank guided missiles, you should use them with a degree of care, and make sure that you're somewhat managing what they're firing at, especially if there's something like the Concourse, or, of course, the later Concourse M. The Fagots, or the Factorias, even them, I would still make sure that you're not having them fire at targets willy-nilly. Because, well, I mean, you're talking about ATGMs, they only have 6 missiles, and the ones that do hit, you want to make sure that they're hitting the best targets that's possible, and that's going to be tanks, usually. Tanks or really important vehicles, like AA or Recon. But you don't want these just shooting at 5-point transports, because I'll do that all the time, where I'll just try to bait an enemy's ATGMs with a bunch of 5-point transports to see if I can get them just to shoot at them. To either, one, the idea is kind of to waste their missiles, or form a screen for my tanks, and two, just to find out where they are, because I lose, for example, with the Factoria, I lose, say 2 5-point transports, a couple M113s, but I find where this is. I know that the enemy's AA web isn't good, or I know that I can get away with an artillery barrage. I drop some artillery on it, and I kill these guys off easily, because they are only a 2-man team, which makes them very vulnerable to stuff like that. They're not going to survive a bombing run. They're not going to really survive much, because you really just got to make sure that these guys are not taking too much fire, if any fire at all. But yeah, so that begs the question, how do you use ATGM infantry as compared with, I'm going to hop over to the vehicle section, with, say, the ATGM vehicles. Well, ATGM infantry has the benefit of being much stealthier, because we are looking at, of course, a 2-man team, as compared to a vehicle. I mean, if you were to compare the size difference, it's quite exponential. So back to our ATGM infantry, the best role is going to be usually in towns, because in towns you can really lock down fields of fire and such, so you can do a lot of damage with that, keeping that in mind. And secondly, you can also use your ATGM infantry, maybe inside of some forests if you know that they provide a good line of sight. But their real value, of course, is their stealthiness. That's how you should use these guys, is just as a stealthy anti-tank unit, because they can engage at much farther, at a much farther range than any other of your infantry can against armor or vehicles. Most of your, units are only going to be able to engage at 700-meter range at, kind of the medium standard. If, it's not 700, you're either going to be engaging at much shorter at 525 meters, or you're going to be engaging at 875 meters. So you're talking about, engaging in somewhere in that area, unless you're looking at light riflemen, which will usually, like the, light riflemen, which will usually be between, like, 1,200 meters to, sometimes, like the U.S. has 1925, but that's the high end. The Arex is pretty standard. That's, 1050 meter range. But, with those, kind of in mind, these are going to be what you're going to use to engage enemies at an extended distance. Now, you could use a bunch of these cheap ATGMs, like the Milan 1s here. They're not likely to hit anything, but when they hit, they still do 17 armor penetration. And they also have, a pretty extended range. And even just a couple ATGMs is sometimes enough to scare off an enemy attack. If I see they're not very accurate, then I might be, since I recognize I can be a bit more aggressive at times, I might just attack. However, there's definitely something to be said for the intimidation that an ATGM flying at your unit takes. So just keep that in mind. ATGMs can be a great deterrent force. Extremely accurate ones, like the Chumat here, probably, they're gonna, once again, use them in towns, use them in that role. They're not really going to vary, but these guys are going to be the real snipers. These guys are the real, danger to enemy tanks and such. The drawback of the Chumat, though, specifically, is that it only has 21 armor penetration, and even, let's see, the Milan 2, for the same price. The same range, less accuracy, but more armor penetration, which means that you're actually going to be able to penetrate, T-72BUs, T-90s, Modernas, and all those other units that you wouldn't be able to penetrate with a Chumat. But, that's only if you hit. So it's that trade-off there. Now, that's basically what anti-tank infantry or ATGM infantry does. Moving on to AA infantry. Think of them as the ATGMs of the, of the air world. What these guys will do is, once again, they sit in a town, but they're not just there to, look, just sit there and have a good time. No, what these guys are going to do is not the blowpipe. The blowpipe won't hit anything, it won't kill anything. But, the goal of any AA infantry is to provide that anti-aircraft inside of a town. Because if the enemy's, say, trying to support an attack with a helicopter, and let's take, for example, you have a self-propelled AA gun, or SPOG. You've got that sitting inside of your town. It can be decent at killing off enemy infantry or something, but the chances are the helicopter and that AA piece are going to be engaging at about the same range. At max range, advantage goes to the AA gun, because the ATGM has to travel quite a bit, and if that helicopter gets, like, stunned or, it starts spinning around, it's not going to be able to keep that ATGM on target, unless you're looking at Apache Longbow. But that's the, not the norm, I guess, we should say. But anyways, the advantage, the closer it gets, the advantage goes to the helicopter more and more. At least that would be what I'd say. There are probably people who disagree with me, because you could say that the accuracy of the gun is far increased and blah 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 blah. It can go either way. But I would say that it's best not to engage with vehicles at close range. However, if you're looking at something like, even if you just take the Stinger missiles, the Stingers, Stingers don't have the best range. But if we compare that to, say, helicopters, rocket pod range. 2,100 meters, 2,275 meters. If you were getting close enough for a machine gun, you're looking at only at 1050 meters. You know, and so in other words, you're staying well out of range of the enemy's, you know, anti-infantry weaponry, especially if you're using something like the PSAM, the Mistral, you know, the Igla. You're staying quite a bit out of range of that, and these guys have the advantage of being very, very hard to detect. If you got a couple of these guys sitting in a town, it's pretty tough for you to, like, really know where they're coming from. The best solution is really just to carpet bomb the entire area, but if you're looking at the Stingers, for example, very accurate. You could you could even shoot down that plane, and they could even shoot down the plane, and it would be just a waste of your bomber. So the best way to counter these guys is to use either a vehicle, if it's possible, or just getting close with infantry, because AA infantry, like ATGM infantry, is, you know, they're not very good against infantry at all. I mean, you're looking at 2 guys with assault rifles compared to 10 guys with, you know, assault rifles and a machine gun. So these guys are going to be significantly outgunned when it comes to that. However, you'll likely have these guys behind, you know, your main infantry push, and so either something's gone terribly wrong and you've lost them all, or you've already got some that are there and able to protect them. So kind of works both ways there. Some of the notable ones, one I would say are the Stinger Cs because of their 70% accuracy. Next one I would say are the Mistrals because of their 26-25 meter range. I'd also place the RBS 90 on that list because it has a 2800 meter range. And the PSAM would be mine for Blue 4. And then Red 4, I'd have the Grom as some of my notable ones. And I'd also have the Igla N or the QW1. I'd have both of those on that list. Now, there are also, I covered this in my Commando tab, but there are, my Commando review, however, there are also some Commando units, like the SAS, LSCR 40s, FJB 40s. All these guys carry a MANPAD of some sort, so that makes these guys much more difficult to counter because they're very all-round. But anyways, that's, of course, you know, already been covered, and outside, you know, kind of what we were just focusing on, is that's just these 2-man teams. You know, sometimes there'll be a 5-man team like the Mistral or the RBS 56 or the RBS 90. Some of those will have 5-man squads, which makes them more survivable, but also, you know, not really a downside to that, but makes them more expensive. Anyways, guys, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe for more content. And if you think someone else could find some use out of this, please share it with a friend or someone who that person who you think could use it. Anyways, this is RC0538 signing off. Have a good day.